Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us. Today we are going to speak about managing organizations during the COVID-19 Vortex. This is a book that has been brought out recently by Knowledge Resources, and it's a comprehensive book to help leaders navigate their organizations through this coronavirus crisis. And today we are privileged to have the Managing Director of Knowledge Resources and also the editor of the book, Wilhelm, Crous, to tell us a little bit more about the book. Wilhelm, thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Right. So can you tell us a little bit about the scope of the book?
Okay, I'm going to kick off by quickly give you the background to the book. During that week that the president announced that we're going to have a lockdown, it was clear that there's chaos, and as Sonja Bluffnote says, we were moving between chaos and confusion. And to make sense for myself, I thought, look, one needs to have a multiple perspective view on this massive crisis that we're facing. With that in mind, it's clear to me that if I had that sort of need, quite a number of other people probably also. So I sat down and I drew up a couple of different, let's call it perspectives on the COVID-19 issue. And I thought, as I went along, I thought, wait a minute, here's a book, actually, that if we can get it out quickly, that was the whole issue. Then it can be a benefit to a lot of people. So I drew up the outline, contacted a number of people, and I said to them, listen, I need your chapter within 10 days. I want to get the book out in 16 days, actually 21, that's what we said. And without any exception, everybody contributed and they agreed to it. And it was not 21 days and 16 days we had the book out. Everybody worked day and night. And I think that was quite something especially on my team on the editing side. So coming back now to the scope, we kick off with giving it a context. I've got Tim Cohen, who was the previous editor of the Financial Mail, providing a broad outline of how it's going to impact business. And then Arthur Kamp from the head economist from Sanlam to provide about the details about the economic fallout. And then we move on through the various sort of perspectives, as I call it. Firstly, on how do you manage change? How do you make sense of what's happening at the moment? And then I thought that Sonja Bluffnote's chapter was excellent. Mona Mostert from the Institute for Futures Research provided 6 scenarios that one could consider for the future and how to then manage organization within either one of those scenarios. At the same time, Theo and Charles de Tooy wrote 2 great chapters on how do you manage and how do you lead through a crisis. How do you make sense of a crisis? As Theo said, during a crisis like this, there's no place to hide for a leader. You have to stand up and be counted. And at the same time, as everybody knows, the whole issue around mental health is quite prominent. And Europe did an excellent job, and Ingra also on their sort of chapters. And then we're getting to the mechanics. In other words, how do you do contingency planning? How do you do crisis communication? So those areas were covered. And then obviously the whole issue about how do you stay resilient and so on. And then obviously there were also the legal side to it. And we had a contribution from Weber Wenzel on that side, on especially the impact on labor relations. So that in a nutshell, and then basically a chapter lastly on what can we expect in the future.
It's definitely a comprehensive book with different viewpoints and the perspectives. And I think it's great for leaders and organizations to have a book like this that will definitely benefit them in the long run. But what are some of those benefits that you would say organizations can gain from having a book like this?
Okay, so obviously we also said to the authors, please provide the people with some checklists, tools, techniques that they can use. As I said, Mono and Mostert provide a beautiful framework for how do you plan scenarios in this time. Sonja Bluffnote provided also a sort of a model on how do you manage between chaos and confusion. What are the sort of parameters within that, and making sense of this unbelievable change that we're going through. Theo provided a great model on how do you lead in this period of time, and at the same time a checklist that you can follow and just make sure you're on the right track and that you're not missing out. The same with on the crisis communication side and contingency planning. So at the same time, look, we must be honest now, nobody has the answer on how to really from A to Z manage through this crisis. We, as I said initially, I always use the quote from Robert Quinn, who said, we're building the bridges, we walk on it. So, and that's what's happening here as well. With the book, to an extent, it provides guidelines, but still we have to improvise along the way as well to make sense of it.
So we learn as we go, basically. Wilhelm, thank you very much. Any last words of encouragement for those leaders and people in organizations out there?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, I think that we should become very comfortable now with one thing, and that is that we're moving in an age, what Charles Handy mentioned in the 90s already, the age of unreason. And that we should be much more comfortable with this massive disruptions that we're facing, not only now, but in the future as well. That seems to be the new normal. If anybody talks about what's going to be post COVID normal, that's going to be the new normal. That we have to face changes and so on. And just if I have the time, I want to share this story with you from Jim Collins, who wrote the book Good to Great. In 2008, Fortune magazine asked him to write a chapter for them, or an article, how do you manage in this volatile period, or during that volatile period. And so he put his researchers to task to find out and to investigate how the world, how many volatile periods have the world gone through over the last 1,000 years. And what they came up with was that the period between the Second World War and 2008 was actually the most stable period that the world has seen for about 500 years. And that that was actually abnormal. And that we should actually ready ourselves for much more turbulence in years to come and decades to come. And I think we're seeing much more of that. We're going to see the fallout of climate change on a much more pronounced basis. The disruption from AI and so on. So obviously what we're going through is volatility on steroids, but we must bear in mind that that's going to be the type of world that we're moving in. Yeah.
So gearing ourselves definitely for the future. And yes, to gear yourself, this is definitely a book I think worth having, and a book that you can use as guidelines, or a guideline to help you during this time. Wilhelm, thank you very much for joining us and just speaking a little bit about the book. And yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Marissa, and good luck with the launch.
Thank you.